What's up everybody, Chad here. Welcome back to Firechild Video, and man has it been a long time. It's been about 3 years actually since my last video, and what can I say guys? It's been a roller coaster 3 years, but things are finally settling down. I can get back to one of my favorite hobbies, which is coming around and sharing tips and tricks with Blender with you folks. So today we're going to take a look at something that's pretty easy.
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy.
Even beginners should have no problems with this.
You bet I could. I'm not such a bad pilot myself.
But it's a fun effect, and it's inspired by the high I'm still feeling from the Rise of Skywalker trailer that I'm sure everybody has seen by now. If you haven't, shame on you. But we're going to take a look at a Lightspeed effect. We're in a default Blender scene now, and we will actually use the cube, but we're not going to use a lamp, so we can right click on that, hit delete, and say bye-bye. Okay, we're going to select our camera. We're going to put it in top view by hitting 7 on the number pad, and then in order to snap the camera to this view, Control-Alt-0. Okay, so here we are in top view. We're gonna use basically a particle system to generate the stars and then to stretch them. So we're gonna use this cube as an emitter for our particles, but we need it to fill the camera. So we'll hit S to scale, and we'll just scale it up until it's just a little bigger than the camera. Then we'll scale it on the X-axis, so hit S and X. Scale it on the X just to where it fills the camera view. If we hit 3 to go into side view, you can see camera box good to go. Okay, so next step, we need to create our Starfield. So let's expand this a little bit. We'll click right here on our particle systems. Okay, so we'll click new to create a new particle system. You can see nothing really happened. If we hit Z to go into wireframe, and scrub our timeline a little bit, you'll see the particles are starting to appear. But if the stars in the universe moved like that, I don't think we'd be around, we'd be alive to see it. So we're gonna need to make some adjustments. Okay, so first of all, they're appearing over the course. If you see start and end times, it's starting at 1 frame, ending at 200. So the particles are being born over that 200 frames. We don't want that. We want all those stars to form all at once, because they're gonna be static. So we'll hit 1 and 1, so start and end at 1 frame. Boom, they're there, but some craziness is happening. So we go into side view, you can see what I mean. It's obviously there's gravity, so it's falling with gravity. We need to turn off gravity. We don't want them falling, so let's go down here to field weights. Click on that, and you'll see we have all these different forces that we can use. We're not really going to be adding any forces, so we're just going to turn off gravity. You could, technically, I guess you could turn off all, so all these effects are turned off, but definitely turn off gravity. So now if we scrub through, they're still moving, but they're not falling down because we turned gravity off. But why are they still moving? Because we still have physics turned on for them, and we don't really need physics. So we'll turn off physics. Now they all stay in place. We're also, just to make sure, turn off that normal. So normal to 0, physics are turned off. They're all right there. Okay, now the next thing we need to set up is the reason we're using a cube is because we kind of want to get a little bit of 3D depth. Even though these stars are so far off in the distance, you don't really see a 3D effect. We kind of want to give it that, especially when we start doing the camera move through the stars for that light warp. So we want the volume of this cube. We don't really want it emitting from the faces. So if you look right here, it says emit from under emission, verts, faces, or volume. If we click volume, you'll see now all those particles are filling up the inside of that cube, and that's exactly what we want. However, if we hit Shift Z, you'll see we still see our cube. Easy way to fix that, down here in the render settings under our particle systems, uncheck emitter. And now you can you might not be able to see the dots because there's not really anything to see, because now we have to give each one of those particles a material. So we have all these options under the render for line, path, object, which is what we're going to use. So let's hit Shift A, and we're going to create a curve circle. Now by default, this is a 3D circle. If we go into our curve settings, it is a 3D circle, which means it is hollow in the middle. We want it to be filled in, so click it over to 2D, and you'll see now it is nice and filled in. Now we're not going to use that circle in our render, it is just to create the material for our stars. We'll put this on its own layer. Hit M to move to new layer, and we'll just move it to layer 2. So now it's by itself on its own layer. We've got our particle system and our camera here. Okay, let's work on this real quick. Let's scale this down. S to scale, and let's give this a material, new material. We'll call it, Starlight. And real simple, change it from a diffuse to an emission. Maybe give it a little bit of a blue tint. We come back and adjust that later. But that's really all we need to do to set up that material. So back in our first layer, click on our cube. It's good to start labeling things. We'll call this star, let's see, emitter, or just call it stars, because that's where our stars are going to be. And we'll call this our star master or something, just so we know that that's the basis for all our stars. Okay, so got our cube selected. Let's go back into our particle settings, and now we'll change the render type from line or halo to object, and then duplicate object right here. Click there, select our star master, and now if we go into render view, we got some stars, folks. And they're looking pretty good, actually. Let's get rid of this gray background real quick. Go into our world tab and change that background color to black. Okay, so there is our Starfield. We can now start tweaking these stars and make them a little better. See, we've only got 1,000 stars right now, and the night sky has a lot more stars than that. So let's go up to 10,000. That might be too many. It might be too many. So let's take it down to 5,000. That's a little better. Okay. We do need, I'm going to tell you what, we're going to scale this cube up a little bit more. Because as you can see, we've got a big grouping of stars in the middle, but it tapers off on the edge, and it really shouldn't do that. So let's scale this up some more. Get that back face lined up with the camera. And there we go. Now we've got some even distribution of stars. And if we wanted to, we could probably bump this up a little bit more. About 6,000. I'm going to zoom in here and you'll see we've got a whole bunch of little stars. And those stars will disappear at about 50 frames. What gives? Why is it doing that? Well, back here in our particle settings, we've got the lifetime of our particles, and our particles are dying at 50 frames. So we want that to last. Our final render will probably be somewhere around 100 frames, but let's go ahead and just give it 150 frames. And we'll set the end here to 100 frames. So now they spawn on, and they are there the duration. Very good. Okay, so basically all that happens with this light speed effect is the stars kind of stretch. You get this cool little camera move that's very subtle, and then boom, the camera zooms straight through the stars real fast. So let's set up with a good couple of seconds. Let's say we're going 30 frames per second. So we'll go to 60 seconds. And this is real easy. Let's go to layer 2. We're going to do a little work with our, let's bring you guy back over here, with our circle. Okay, now in Blender you can set a keyframe for just about anything. And what we're going to do with this curve, and this is the reason I made it as a curve and not a circle mesh, is in our curve settings we have this option to extrude. And as you see, as we make this larger and it extrudes, the cool thing here, let's set it to a really huge number. If we extrude this one circle back in our particle system, every one of our particles extrudes as well. It couldn't be simpler to make this effect. All we have to do is animate the extrusion of this one curve, and most of our work is done for us. So let's go back to 0 here. We're at 60 frames. We'll set a keyframe. Just hover your cursor over extrude, hit I, and that'll create your keyframe. And we want to go about a second, almost a second. So we'll go to about 90 frames, and we'll set it back up to about 500. And be sure to hit I on your keyboard, and that creates your keyframe. So now we've got it going from nothing to really stretched. Now, go into our camera view on our first layer. We've got all our stars just hanging out, just chilling. Just chilling, and then they stretch. Cool. Okay, so now all we have left to do is our camera work. So we'll go, it does it for about a second, so we'll go about halfway in between there. About frame 75, maybe about frame 80. We want them to get nice and long before we do this move. We'll select our camera. We'll go into side view to make this easier. 5 for orthographic, and we'll set a keyframe for its position. Press I on the keyboard, select location, and then move forward to about 90, and we're gonna move in just a little bit, just for a little slow zoom in. Press I, location, so it moves in, and we'll actually we'll go into our dope sheet and make a little room here. And we'll select our keyframes for our camera, or just our first keyframes, starting keyframes. Press G, we'll move that back some. We want a nice slow camera move coming in. And then when it gets to this point, we're gonna go like 10 frames, and we are going to shoot through it. So that's going to be a very fast camera movement. Location. So now we got this. The stars grow, camera shoots through. And we can actually move the start of that camera move even further. Okay, so there's that. Now one other thing we want to do is, as that camera move does that little zoom in, we want to widen the focal length. And that's a trick that you see in photography. I believe it was pioneered by Alfred Hitchcock. Most recently, one thing that comes to mind is in Lord of the Rings, when Frodo's standing on the road in Fellowship of the Ring, and he hears the horsemen coming, and you see that camera zooms in on him, but it seems like the background stretches. Well, that's a camera trick in the real world, where the camera is tracking in but zooming out at the same time. So you get this weird sort of stretch of the background. And we're kind of gonna not do exactly that, but we're gonna use the principles of that to just add a little extra dynamics to this shot. So the camera starts to stretch, the camera's moving in. So we'll go to our focal length here. We'll hit I on our keyboard. That sets a keyframe right there. And then as it goes in there, we will widen our focal length. Not a whole lot. Let's say about 28. And then hit a keyframe. I for a keyframe there. So now we've got this cool zoom in. Makes the stars seem like they're stretching a little bit more. Boom. Okay, so let's Shift Z. And now we can start playing around with our materials a little bit. So we'll select our Star Master up here, go into our materials, and let's play around. Let's see what 2 does. 2 might be a little too bright. So we do want a little of that blue coming through. Okay, so let's render one frame here. Because now we can go in and add that cool glow. So we'll split this view here, go into our node editor, and we'll select right here for our compositing, click use nodes, and let's add in Shift A filter glare. We don't want streaks, we want a fog glow, because we want to add a little bit of a glow. We'll drop the threshold down and size up, make threshold of 0.5. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so let's render this full size so we can see it. One other thing I want to do while we're in the compositing node is I want to do a little bit of some color correction. Okay, so we're just going to add a RGB curves here. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Darken it up a little bit, and that'll bring out some of the highlights and differences in the stars. See, now some of the stars are brighter than others, Get a little more of that bluish coming in. We'll probably actually accent the blue just a little bit. Yeah, I like that. And one other thing you can do before you render this out is you can turn on some motion blur for a little bit of an added effect. It won't make a huge difference, so if you forget, not a big deal. But we'll go into our render settings, scroll down, turn on motion blur right here. We'll put center on frames fine. Shutter type from none to top bottom. And rolling shutter duration, I figure about 0.75 or 1 should be pretty good. That's all you really need to do to turn on your motion blur. So set that up, hit animation, and let her go. And there you have it, folks. Really cool light speed effect that George Lucas would be proud of. Didn't take a whole lot of time, renders pretty fast. You can use it in any of your space scenes. You could also render out just a still frame of these stars. Add that star as a backdrop, say if you're doing the Earth or the Moon or space scene of some nature and you need a background of stars, you can use that. And I hope you guys had a good time. It's great to be back. I've got more tutorials on the way, and we've got some other more entertainment themed stuff. I don't want Firechild Video to be strictly tutorials. I want it to be more entertainment and learning. So we're going to be having some real fun here in the next few weeks. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's good to be back. Stay tuned. We'll see you guys again soon.